Okay, so Summer Game Fest just wrapped up, and I wanted to go over some of my immediate thoughts on the show. And there were a lot of things that were revealed or updated here during the course of this presentation. I counted 41 different games, so I'm going to do my best to go over all of this tomorrow morning in Newswave, so check that out there on the main channel, 8 a.m. Eastern time when all of that goes live. But I highlighted a few games here that I just kind of wanted to touch on, and then my overall thoughts on the presentation and the structure and all this. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if new here to the Spawnwave Plus channel. So they opened, I think, with a pretty good title. It's a new game, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I would like to see more of these publishers take a shot at the 2D genre, the setup there for something like Prince of Persia. Calling back to some of the original Prince of Persia games, I think, is a great idea. It still kind of has that 3D aesthetic to it, sort of like the 2D, 2.5D look with some pretty large enemies. They did mention that it's a Metroidvania style, so it seems like there'll be a lot of exploration there. There's going to be more information shared during Ubisoft Forward, but this is going to set up kind of a trend for this entire showcase. We saw gameplay for it. It wasn't just a cinematic trailer, which, hey, again, off to a good start there. January 18th. And then we rolled into more gameplay. This was an extended look at Mortal Kombat 1. So, as I mentioned, they started off pretty strong with two titles that I was definitely paying attention to right off the bat. Showed off cameo fighters that can work into your combos, and it's a one-button summon or press. Basically, you bring them in, they'll do a move, and it can string into some of your moves. And apparently that one button and then comboed with, I guess, the D-pad or something there will have them do different moves that they have set up. And the cameo fighters, there's an entire character selection screen for them separate from the main character selection, and they have definitely done some changes here with the story. Even Sub-Zero and Scorpion are brothers. They showed off Melina right away, which is good because that was a whole thing with Mortal Kombat 11. Visually, it looks good. The fatalities look as ridiculous as ever, even more so here. So, Mortal Kombat 1, looking good. Then I want to jump to Sonic Superstars. This came out of nowhere for me. This and Prince of Persia. Prince of Persia, at least we had heard that there was a 2D game in development. Sonic Superstars was interesting because they showed it, and it kind of gave me vibes immediately of like Sonic Generations or Sonic 4 even. Again, that 2.5D look. But you can play as different characters. Tails, Knuckles, Amy were all shown off. They mentioned different abilities. And I don't mind that style, like the Sonic 4 style, I guess, as long as it still maintains kind of the speed aspect of Sonic, where you're trying to get from the beginning to the end and taking different lines and paths there, but it all happened very fluidly, and it looked like that was the case. So a very nice surprise to get another 2D Sonic game, that coming fall 2023, and there was gameplay there. So again, continues kind of that trend. Spider-Man 2, this is kind of a weird one to me. Now, I assume Sony looked at this whole thing and said, we can show Spider-Man 2 twice, technically, and it's just good marketing for the game. But they showed it during their PlayStation showcase, and we got gameplay for it, which was fine. And they said fall 2023, but they left some details out. Obviously, things like even the box art, we didn't really know. It wasn't available for pre-order necessarily until now, where they show up. We do have a look at gameplay we saw before in the showcase for Sony, but they gave us the release date and the box art itself. They also gave us some other details, one of which has me incredibly interested in the story for this one. But the game is coming out October 20th, so there were thoughts that it could be coming out in September, right next to Starfield even. No, it looks like an extra month into 2023. So October 20th, I think that's a good spot for Spider-Man 2. But the thing that even caught me off guard is they showed some artwork, maybe an in-game screenshot almost, of Venom, as we would know Venom with like Eddie Brock, right? Like the big, bulking Venom. So very clearly there's going to be a part of the story where Peter loses the symbiote and it attaches to someone else, because it's not Eddie Brock in this game. In fact, they specifically mention they wanted to make a more original story all the way around with Miles, Peter, and whoever the identity of Venom is. In fact, that appears to be one of the big things that'll probably be spoiled before the game comes out, let's be real. And that is a pretty big spoiler, I would say, if it gets out there, because that's certainly going to be, I assume, one of the big twists in the game. Could Kraven maybe come across the symbiote, and that's what we're seeing there towards the end, and really that's like one of the last scenes in the game, like big fights? It's possible, but I'm really curious to see Venom's story play out here. If it's not Eddie Brock, who has the symbiote there as Venom? Interesting stuff to keep in mind. And then to close out, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And this is interesting on so many different levels because Final Fantasy XVI is right around the corner. So you feel like this would have been the last big marketing push for that game with the announcement of a demo. That didn't happen. Instead, we see Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which we kind of figured there was something coming for this game because they've been releasing these developer questions and answers. And it's obviously been working to build up to some sort of reveal, and here it is with a full gameplay trailer. Once again, gameplay. And the game looks good. The thing that struck me immediately is it looks significantly more open than Final Fantasy VII Remake, but we would expect that, considering we're now outside of Midgar and walking around in, I assume, this big open world. And it certainly looks like this is going to be a trailer that many of the Final Fantasy VII fans, especially people who really do deep dives on this stuff, are going to be analyzing almost frame by frame because there was a lot of story information being compiled here. But they were very deliberate to show Red 13 being a playable, controllable character, and it's coming out early 2024, which makes me think maybe February, and in fact, that means that we would get 16, right? That's coming up at the end of June, just about. And then 8 months later, we're going to have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So Square is, they're certainly pushing a lot of titles out there, which kind of makes sense to get both of these within their current fiscal year. It should do well for them overall revenue-wise. Both of these games should do pretty good numbers, I would say. But they also mentioned it's going to be on 2 Blu-ray discs. Now, the current Blu-ray format, Ultra UHD or whatever, that holds 100 gigabytes. Which tells me this game could be bordering on that 200 gigabyte mark. I'm kind of thinking it's going to be maybe 150 to 200 gigabytes, somewhere in there, right? And they've decided to ship it on 2 different discs in order, of course, to make sure you don't have to necessarily piecemeal the game and you then have to download a chunk. It's all going to be right there on the physical media, which, if you remember, Final Fantasy Remake, when it came out on the PS4, also shipped on 2 Blu-ray discs. However, those were 50 gigabyte Blu-rays. These being the ultra high definition ones that can hold 100 gigabytes. I believe this is a first. So I like this trend from Square Enix. We hear that Final Fantasy 16 may not even need a day one patch. It's all going to be available on the disc. And now we see 7 Rebirth have 2 discs in order to have everything available there, I guess for the sake of preservation, but also for the physical collectors. This is an awesome thing to hear. And as I mentioned, there were 41 different games, so I'll be going over everything else tomorrow in Newswave. These are just some of the highlights I wanted to pick out and go over in more condensed video. But as for the show itself, I think Jeff did a pretty good job. Of course, these shows for each individual person is going to vary based on which games were shown off, right? Like there are going to be points in the show where the games just are not what you're looking for, so it's going to feel like a down period where someone else may be really excited for Like a Dragon Gaiden, right? And that a big highlight for them to see that. So if I look at it objectively from a structural standpoint, I think Jeff did a pretty good job as the show came in at, an hour 45, and with 41 different games, as well as talks with some of the developers, right? Bring them up on stage, kind of discuss some of the things that are going on. Even people from Hollywood. We have like Nicolas Cage up on stage because, why not? But be able to fit all of that in with 41 different games that actually had, I would say, more gameplay than cinematics. I mean, it's a pretty good show. I have it sitting right now at, I'm going to say a solid B, but let me know what you guys thought about this Summer Game Fest show overall, whether it was some of the reveals, which one was your favorite, or just the pacing and the structure for the show that Jeff put together for 2023. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.